Start us up. We're on in 3, 2, and 1.
So it's a wife swap. You're going to do the nerdery, and I'm going to do the murdery.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, welcome to episode 150 of Nerdery Murdery.
Big 150. I'm Zig with your murdery today.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Nerdery today. Welcome to another wife swap, another week of the highs and lows, and the ups and downs, the good and the bad, and the nerd and the murd. We're at episode 150 again. This is our regular wife swap that we do every 25 episodes where I take over on the nerdery side of the house and Zig takes over on the murdery. So I hope it'll be interesting today. I know last week we covered some sci-fi. Well, we're going to be doing that again today, where I'm going to be covering 2 more little-known sci-fi movies and 1 sci-fi TV series that you need to see. So I will kick it off. The stuff I'm talking about, the first one that I'm going to be talking about as a sci-fi movie is Looker. Looker is a 1981 American science fiction film. It was written and directed by Michael Crichton. It starred Albert Finney, Susan Day, and James Coburn. It follows a series of mysterious deaths plaguing female models who have undergone cosmetic surgery from a renowned Los Angeles physician. The film is a suspense science fiction piece that comments upon satirized media, advertisement, television's effects on the populace, and a ridiculous standard of beauty. Though it was sparse in visual effects, there aren't a whole lot of sci-fi special effects in it. The film is the first commercial film to attempt to make a computer-generated three-dimensional, solid-looking model of a whole human body. However, as with its predecessors, Future World, Star Wars, and Alien, this was an example of CGI representing CGI and only depicted on CRT screens in the film rather than being used as a special effect. The model had no skeletal or facial movements and was not a character. And Looker was also the first film to create three-dimensional 3D shading with a computer months before the release of the better-known film Tron, which, there's a Tron 3 coming out.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I like 2.
Yeah, 2 was really good.
Of course, I liked 1 as well. But so Crichton started thinking about the subject of the film in 75. He said he went to a Los Angeles computer company to find out how they would create copies of commercials without looking too ridiculous, and discovered a company in Texas that were already doing it called Tomography. Looker became an early production of the Ladd Company. It was Lee Taylor Young's first film in 8 years. And James Coburn later said, quote, "My part was pretty much on the cutting room floor. They really pissed that film away. They had Albert Finney running around in a security guard uniform throughout the film. It didn't make any sense. It could have been a good picture. It was about how television controls. It was about how commercials manipulate people to buy products, politicians, whatever. But they cut the film up for a television print, and I don't know why they did that. They spent some bread on the picture, too. It was a $12 million production. That's not much today, but back then it was a pretty big budget. It actually made 3 million off a budget of 8 to 12, so it bombed. It was poorly received by critics, particularly film historian Leonard Maltin, who said, quote, "An intriguing premise is mishandled. The result is illogical and boring, and even Albert Finney cannot save this turkey."
Wow. Leonard Maltin did not like this film at all.
No. It holds a 32% rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 22 reviews and was not a success at the box office. As I said earlier, it bombed. It didn't make its budgets back. I
I didn't
didn't
think it was that bad.
No, I disagree that it was a bad film. I don't know why more people didn't like this movie. I mean, I've watched this dozens and dozens of times. Unfortunately, it's not free anywhere. You have to rent or buy it.
Mhm.
But it did garner enough interest that it got a Blu-ray release. I think this movie was before its time. I mean, this movie kind of predicted deep fakes and things like the
Mhm.
Google Glass.
It sure
Crichton's a
did.
genius.
Yeah.
And in recent years, we've been de-agifying actors to play in movies of their younger selves, and this seems to get better with every passing year.
Mhm.
Another thing I love about this movie is the theme song. It's been in my playlist for years. There's 2 versions you can hear. There's Sue Saud's version and Oh, dadgummit, now I forgot her name. The one who did the one, the other version of it. Um, she did the song Betty Davis Eyes.
Kim
Kim
Carnes.
Carnes. Kim Carnes. Yes, she did another version of the song, and I like both songs. Both songs are in my playlist, both versions. I really love it. This song, this movie is a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Susan Day, I think, is great in it. Albert Finney, I think, is great in it. And again, it's about all these models that are dying after they basically become perfected by Albert Finney's character. He's a plastic surgeon, and he does little micro changes to make them perfect. And once they're perfect, they're eliminated because they don't want to have to pay them anymore, and they can just use their likenesses on commercials and TV shows. I think it's a really cool movie.
Yeah,
I enjoy it.
yeah.
What do you think about this movie?
No, no, I agree. Yeah, I kind of agree with James Colburn. I would like to see some more of the cuts because I think he probably should have been in that movie a little more than he was, the
Hmm.
final product.
Hmm.
But I don't think it's a bad movie.
No, no, because like I said, I've watched it many, many times,
Yeah,
at least dozens of times. I've watched it. I
yeah,
mean, when it was on cable, I watched it all the time.
yeah.
Give this one a watch if I would say it's at least worth the rent.
Hmm.
If you don't want to buy it, give it a rent. I think you can get it for like less than $5 for a rent.
Yeah, it's like 2.99 or 3.99. It's
Something
cheap.
like that.
Yeah,
Give
it's less than $5.
give it a watch. I think you'll find it
Yeah,
enjoyable.
and it
Uh,
will probably pop back up on one of the sites here pretty soon too. That's
I
usually how
hope
it
so.
goes.
I look for it. I own it on DVD. Um, but I would like to watch it streaming because I don't have a DVD player anymore or a Blu-ray player anymore. I watch everything streaming. But give this one a watch. I think you would actually enjoy it if you give this one a watch.
Oh yeah, agree wholeheartedly. And oh my God, the cover, the well, the video cassette cover and the original poster of the woman draped across the four televisions stacked
Yeah,
up is so
yeah,
salacious and beautiful.
yeah.
Oh
I'd like to see a remake of this one.
yeah, especially today
Yes.
because we're actually in that territory now
Yeah. Yeah. I
where it
think
was
this is one that
far
some
future when they were first talking about it.
yeah, I think someone should grab this one and do a revision of it with modern graphics and whatnot. I mean, especially one of the things that we're now starting to see is this generative AI
Mm.
depiction of characters from books or what cartoon characters might actually look like in real life and changing up how people look. I saw a friend of mine from high school. She had the generative AI show her in different scenarios and different things. I think this is one that should be remade.
Oh yeah.
My next film is Krull. I love this movie. Krull is a 1983 science fantasy swashbuckler film directed by Peter Yates and written by Stanford Sherman. It follows Prince Colwyn and a fellowship of companions who set out to rescue his bride, the Princess Lissa, from a fortress of alien invaders who have arrived on their home planet. The film stars Kenneth Marshall as Prince Colwyn, with a large ensemble cast, including Lisette Anthony, Freddie Jones, and Alan Armstrong.
Liam
Develop
Neeson, very young Liam Neeson
Yes,
too.
yes, Liam Neeson's in it as well. Development on the film began in 1980 when Columbia Pictures President Frank Price gave producer Ron Silverman the idea to produce a fantasy film. An international co-production of the United Kingdom and United States, Kroll was released in July of '83. The film was a box office bomb upon release, and critical opinion has been mixed both upon release and in retrospect. It had a box office of almost 17 million with a budget between 27 and 30 million, so it got a pretty big hit.
Yeah.
Numerous reviewers have highlighted its visual effects and soundtrack, while several critics had criticized its plot as being derivative and nonsensical.
I
Yates
disagree.
I disagree too.
Yeah.
Yates described Kroll as being complicated and just so enormous. Special effects artist Brian Johnson stated in a 2009 interview that Yates hated working on the film so much that in the middle of shooting, he took a vacation in the Caribbean, which led to the special effects artist taking a 3-week break from the project. The film score was composed by James Horner and performed by the London Symphony Orchestra and the Ambrosian Singers. It has been commended as part of the composer's best early efforts. The soundtrack considered a high point of the film. Ryan Lambie, reviewing of Den of Geek, wrote, quote, "The 70s and 80s seem to be the era of great sci-fi and fantasy themes, and Horner's is high up on the list of the best, providing the film a grandiose sweep to match the broad vistas of Kroll's location photography." Despite its critical and box office failure, the film has gained a cult following over the years. There was a 2017 review by All Movie journalist Jason Buchanan that hailed it as, quote, "an ambitious sci-fi fantasy that even in its failures can usually be forgiven for its sheer sense of bravado." Ryan Lambie, reviewing for Den of Geek in 2011, stated that, quote, "among the most visually creative and downright fun movies of the enchanted 80s, and an entire galaxy away from other cheap, quickly made knockoffs that showed up in the wake of Star Wars." In a 2006 retrospective, Pop Matters critic Bill Gibran found many problems with Kroll, but noted it had an amusement amalgamation rare for a film released in the early 80s, where, quote, "if you don't like one particular character or circumstance, just wait, something completely different is around the corner." He summarized that it's the perfect pickup film, a movie you can catch in snatches while it plays on some cable channel. No matter what point you come in on the story, no matter what sort of scene is playing out before you, the lack of continuity and context actually allows you to take pleasure in the individual moment, and if so inclined, to stick around for another exciting sample in just a few minutes.
Okay. Part of what that dude said was completely true. You can watch that movie from any point and it's good.
Yes.
But him saying that the movie is nonsensical, no. It's like Star Cops when they were reviewing Star Cops. It's like you guys just didn't know what you were looking at.
Mm.
You just didn't know. You know, you guys, it was a little too far out there for you.
Well, in writing about the film in 2009, Eric D. Schneider summarized, quote, "against all odds, Kroll crams itself with magic, fantasy, and heroic quests, yet still manages to be boring. This is an impressive feat in and of itself. You'd almost have to be doing it on purpose."
Oh, that
I,
guy's just a dick.
I agree. I absolutely love this movie from start to finish. And this is
Yeah.
another one I have watched dozens of times
Oh
over the
yeah.
years. I love the glaive.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I love the whole journey from the kingdom to the alien fortress and how because the alien fortress moves every day.
Every day.
It's not like you can just start going. You have to be able to get to it in a day, and you have to know where it is. And there's the journey to get to what is it, the green lady, the lady in green, something like that, where she's able to tell them where it's going to be the next day.
Next day. And then they have to get there.
Yes, then they have to get there, and then they have to get these magical horses that
Hmm.
will get them there quickly.
Fire mares.
The fire mares, which are just great. I love how they capture the fire mares and get that.
And they get into the
Uh,
fortress just as it's disappearing.
yes, yes. The Cyclops that's in it is great.
Yeah.
I love that
That
character.
that actor was real big in the Carry On films. He was a comedic actor. No one had ever seen him do anything serious before, and this was it.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
really cool.
But you don't recognize him. I kinda his faces are kinda that way, but I mean, he doesn't look like him.
Prince Colwyn picks up this group of criminals to
Hmm.
help him along his quest, and I think the soldiers that the evil has that he uses against them. I think those are great. I think
Oh
the
yeah,
costumes are great with those.
yeah.
I
And
mean,
every time you hit them, they turn into something small and skitter away.
yeah, they have this big scream, and then they turn something small. It's really a good movie, and it's a fun movie. I'm glad it's picked up a cult following. This one you can see out there. I don't think you have to pay to see this one. I think
Yeah.
it's out there. Go see this one. Kroll is a fun movie to
Oh
watch.
yeah.
We had talked once about Hawk the Slayer.
Yeah.
It's
I
kind
think
of a
we talked
long.
about Kroll a little bit too, but
We
not
may have.
not as in depth as we are today.
No, no. If you enjoyed our review when we talked about Hawk the Slayer, Pick this one up too. It's a better movie than Hawk the Slayer,
It
even though I
is.
really enjoy Hawk the Slayer a
Yeah.
lot too.
Yeah. Well, the
Um,
effects are
much
on
better,
a level higher.
much better. Yeah,
Yeah.
more money was spent on this than Hawk the Slayer.
Um,
So give this
yeah,
one a
and I
watch.
remember that the beast was originally going to be a dragon. And they're like, no, no, no,
Yeah,
we need to make it like a demon beast from beyond the galaxy, and
yeah.
totally the right move.
Oh,
Totally the
absolutely,
right move.
absolutely.
Because the thing is just, oh my God, it's frightening, and you never really get a good look at it.
Yeah, yeah. Just its eyes at one point.
Yeah.
Really cool. Give this one a watch.
Oh yeah,
Please give this one a watch. I think
definitely.
you will absolutely
Uh,
enjoy
our
this one.
YouTube playlist, I believe, the whole film is there in pieces. But as he said, you can go and see it on a bunch of different streaming platforms for free. Watch it. It's worth it. It's beautiful.
Uh, Let me look that up real quick because I forgot to put that in
Code.
my notes. No, it is for rent. You'd have to get on Amazon Prime for rent. Fandango at home, YouTube, Google Play Movie, Apple TV. Um, watch Crawl Prime Video. Rent it for 359. 359. It's worth your 359. I can tell you
Yeah.
that.
Well, I mean, if you can buy it for under $20, I'd say go ahead and buy it. It's worth it. You will watch it again, but you'll be like, God damn. And the movie is pretty.
Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty. It is so well shot. It's like, oh, what's the one with Tim Curry and Tom Cruise?
Legend.
Yeah, it's like Legend. It's shot like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I liked Legend too. I liked Legend. Legend came out right before Top Gun, which was of course massive,
Yeah.
but yeah, I could have easily put Legend in here as well with Kroll, but I chose Kroll on this one. So
Yeah, glad you did. Curl's a great. I can talk about Curl forever. It's a great movie, and I still don't understand why people hate it so much.
yeah, I don't know.
It's like, okay, is the story a little drawn out? Yeah, it's a hero's journey story.
I don't
It's
think it's drawn
supposed to
out.
be.
I
It's
don't think
supposed
it's
to be a
drawn out at
little.
all.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point of that story. It's not you don't just go and fight the bad guy. You
No,
have to gather a team. You have to figure out how to find it. You have to part of the plot.
yeah,
It would not work if you didn't do that.
no, no, not at all. So our consensus of this: watch this one.
Yes, watch Kroll. If you don't want to pay for it, go to our YouTube playlist. Watch it right now. It's in like 10 pieces.
The last one I have on my list, and this one is available on Amazon Prime for free. It's actually on Freevee, so it's produced through Freevee and is shown on Amazon Prime. And this is Lex.
Lex.
Lex, which is also, and this is a TV show, so you've got 4 seasons of this. Lex, also known as Lex, the Dark Zone Stories and Tales from a Parallel Universe, is a science fiction series created by Lex Gigeroff and brothers Paul and Michael Donovan. It originally aired on April 18th, 1997 on Canada's City TV as 4 made-for-TV movies. Beginning with season 2, the format changed to a traditional TV series with each episode running 45 minutes long. The series follows a group of mismatched individuals aboard the organic spacecraft Lex as they travel through 2 universes and encounter planets, including a parody of Earth. The spaceship Lex is this giant bug.
Mm-hmm.
I guess kind of almost fly mosquito
Yeah, Dragonfly
shaped.
maybe.
Dragonfly, maybe, yeah, maybe more like a dragonfly. It's the most powerful spaceship in 2 universes. In the 2 known universes, it can blow up planets extremely easily. It does need to eat organic material, so occasionally it needs to blow up planets and eat the organic material left behind. Um, it it's it's an ironic TV show, it's a
Mm-hmm.
parody, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
sex comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, there's a lot of innuendos in it. There is some nudity in some episodes, not a
Mm-hmm.
whole lot, but a lot of sexual innuendos. The shower head looks kind of like a penis hanging from the ceiling with hair
Mm-hmm.
on it. Um, it explores the ideas of fatalism, reincarnation of afterlife, and the paradigm of good and evil. The series is a Canadian and German co-production with some additional funding from Channel 5 and Sci-Fi Channel purchased the series from Salter Street Films and began airing the episodes from season 1 and 2 for the United States in January of 2000. It was co-produced by Salter Street Films and later absorbed by Alliance Atlantis. And in Canada, Lex aired on the Alliance Atlantis owned Showcase network. It was primarily filmed in Canada and Germany, with additional filming on location in Iceland, Thailand, Namibia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, as well as the British Virgin Islands. It had a lot of different tones during its run. The original TV movies in the second season were mostly science fiction drama with dark comedy. Season 3 was more serious. It explores themes of life, death, and reincarnation. And then the show's final season, set on Earth in the early 2000s, took many turns in a pure farce, introduced magic and other elements. And the series has garnered quite a cult following. The three main characters of the series are the Lex and its crew, consisting of security guard class 4 Stanley H. Tweedle,
Stanley Tweedle.
Zev, Z-E-V, later Zev, X-E-V, Bellringer, who is half love slave and half cluster lizard, the former undead, the undead former assassin, the last of the Brunin G. Kai, and the love-crazed robot head 790, and the powerful but simple-minded Lex. So Zev is bred as a love slave in the cluster. But because she disobeys her husband, she is going to be sentenced to death. And there's an accident, which she's a bigger woman when she starts.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the accident, she's transformed into this very svelte, very sexy woman, but she's also half cluster lizard because the cluster lizard got in the machine,
Yep.
and her love lust got transferred into a robot.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up being 790 because the whole thing was she wasn't going to be executed. I'm sorry. She was going to be punished by having to fall in love with the first person she saw for the transformation. Well,
Mm-hmm.
790 ended up getting that part of her, and he fell in love immediately with Zev. And later he falls in love with Kai.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kai is a great character. He's very deadpan. He's undead. He can't be killed. He's
The last of the
the
Brunin.
Brunin G. Yes, the theme song has the Brunin G anthem in it.
I have included just the Brunin G anthem.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Our playlist, so you can actually watch the episode. I think I've got 6 or 7 episodes of Lex in there, and but the first one is just the Brunin G anthem of him singing as they're going to attack.
Well, and Stanley Tweedle, he's the captain of the Lex because he inadvertently gets the key to the Lex, which is this force that goes into a person, and it has to be a live person, and can only be transferred upon near death to somebody else. So Stanley is the only one who can captain the Lex and tell the Lex what to do. There are some
and he is a working stiff.
He is a working stiff. He's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
He is undersexed. He really wants sex from Zev or any woman.
Yeah.
Which
mostly
he gets
Zev.
Which he gets from time to time, though. Not
Yes.
Never from Zev. Never from
Zev.
Even though Zev has lusts of her own, she's in love with Kai, who can't reciprocate to her because he's dead.
He's dead. Oh my God. And what's really funny is when she was a bigger woman, and then she gets transferred into this felt lady. On where she's from, the svelte lady is the unattractive one.
Yes.
The bigger woman she's like, you've made me horribly disfigured.
Yes.
So there's a little play on that.
Well, in the show, it's
very
very tongue in cheek, very much so. In the show, centuries prior to the start of the show, mankind was nearly destroyed in a war with the insect civilization. Both sides were trying to destroy or do total annihilation of the other. The Brunin G led humanity to victory, but they were later enslaved by the Divine Order, who's a religious cult centered around his shadow, a mystical being who seeks to enslave the two universes. There's the light and the dark universe. And it was foretold to Kai by the time prophet that one day his people would destroy his shadow and the last remnants of the insect civilization, which does happen. The plot of the show occurs over a span of 6,000 years. Kai's death occurs 2008 years before the beginning of the main events of the series. Seasons 1 and 2, each episode is focused around space travel and usually around one specific planet, whereas season 3 and 4 have a single general location for all episodes. And while I like the episodes, I like the weekly format of seasons 1 and 2 in different locations. While there was an overarching villain, the crew was not stuck in one place.
Mm-mm.
The beginning of season 3, the crew had spent 4,000 years in cryostasis before arriving at the twin planets Fire and Water, and that's where they stay through the entirety of season 3, with the main overarching villain being Prince. I didn't really like Prince as a villain,
Mhm.
so I was not as fan of season 3. And then season 4, very near to Fire and Water, is Earth, and
Mhm.
the Lex reaches Earth in the early 2000s. Lister from Red Dwarf is in season 4.
Yes. Yes. Greg Charles.
Yes.
Charles. Yeah.
Um,
Lista.
so it's really cool. Season 1 was shot in Halifax, Nova Scotia, primarily to repurpose Volvo plant on the waterfront. Additional
They
scenes.
they needed a large
Yeah.
facility. It had
Oh
to look
yeah.
cavernous because the
Yes.
Lex
The
is
Lex is
huge.
big. The Lex
Yeah,
is
it looks like a
really, really
warehouse on the
big.
inside. Yeah, that was a smart idea using an old auto plant.
Additional scenes were shot at Babelsberg Studios in Berlin. The proto blood that Kai lives off was a combination of honey and hand lotion. Um,
Dude, he has to drink that shit.
he doesn't drink it. It's all part of his blood. It flows through him. That's part of the main focus in all of season 1. I think some of season 2 is having to find more proto blood for
That's
Kai
what it was. Yeah.
because he can't continue to live dead
Yeah.
without the
Be
proto
undead.
blood.
Yeah, he would just be dead, as
He'd
opposed
just
to
be dead,
undead.
dead, right? So he has to have the proto blood. One hallway for the cluster was so long that it extended outside the studio, through a dressing room, and into another studio. The command chair for the Lex was outfitted with an easily removable skin, allowing it to be shot from any angle. That skin would later be removed entirely after season 1. And the food that the Lex produces, which is gross, for the crew was mashed yams in season 1 and rice pudding for the rest of the series. It looks gross.
It
Just
does.
this gloop that gets
Glue.
spewed out of these pipes.
Glue. Yes, and it's not pleasant. It looks
Yes.
like a biological process.
Yes, it's terrible.
Glue.
Lex has garnered a cult following, as I said, primarily through word of mouth over the early internet. A large number of fan sites have been created, including forums, chat rooms, and sharing arts and crafts with other fans. The series is frequently referred to by the creators as fans of Star Trek's Evil Twin. Salter Street would host an annual Uncon convention where fans were invited to tour the studio and sets and meet the cast and crew. Each of the conventions had over 30, 60, and 100 guests each year, respectively. Season 1 holds a 43% critical rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 7 reviews. In a negative review, Linda Stassi of New York Daily News says, quote, she can only imagine that the great Sci-Fi channel must have been captured by idiot monsters from outer space in Germany. Staff of The Independent called it, quote, a wacky German-Canadian sci-fi import for people who find Babylon 5 too cerebral. It's extremely gory, not a little nasty, and rather fun. TV Guide called Lex, quote, a siren of distinction for its black comedy, skewed take on the human condition and open sexuality, while calling the visual effects stunning. Gavin Edwards of Spin gave praise to the visual effects, writing that, quote, there was a time when a German Canadian production like this would have had sets with wobbly walls and laughable special effects, but now computer costs are low enough that even when the storyline flags, often, you will be dazzled by the state of art graphic vistas, exploding planets, and gargantuan phallic symbols streaking throughout the stars, because there are a lot of them. In a retrospective, Chris Alcock of Den of Geek writes that Lex's appeal comes from a combination of its anti-heroes, overarching plots and themes, experimentation with new ideas, and its simplistic humor, concluding that Lex is not exactly a high concept sci-fi, but damned if we didn't laugh anyway. For better or worse, Lex is really one of a kind, and that's why we loved it.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing else out there like it.
Well, Sci-Fi Now magazine included Lex on their list of 10 overlooked 90s sci-fi shows, and Lex has also achieved some mainstream notice with Xenia Seberg as Zev appearing on a July 2000 cover of TV Guide. And that's the second Zev, the XEV, because she gets changed out actresses. Eva Haberman is the original. The cast and crew have been asked on multiple occasions about continuing the series in a form of spin-off or movie. And while the cast acknowledged rumors about talks of a movie being in the works, Xenia Seberg stated it's unlikely to occur due to funding and rights issues. Brian Downey, who plays Stanley Tweedle, also states that Sci-Fi was barely interested in the season 4. The producers have stated on multiple occasions that the series was not canceled and ended on their terms, but several members of the cast, including Downey, Seberg, and Dubin, have stated they would love to work with each other again. Again, this is a show I love. Another one I've gone through many times over the years. I'm actually rewatching it now. I'm in season 4, trying to get all the way through it again. Um, I originally caught this on Showtime when I had insomnia and was channel surfing late at night. And I instantly became hooked.
Wait, I was trying to remember what it was on a premium channel too. I couldn't remember what it was.
Showtime.
It was Showtime.
Yep, that's where I caught it.
Showtime
And
when they did the Sci Fridays.
yes, yes. And I was especially interested because of the original Zev, Eva Haberman. She left the show due to other obligations and was replaced by Xena Seberg, who then became Zev. I had a huge crush on Eva Haberman. I thought she was gorgeous. Um, this show was fun. It's so tongue in cheek. It's so much sexual overtones in it. There's one episode in season 3 when they go to Boomtown on water. There's planet's fire and water. They go to Boomtown, and Boomtown is filled with people who want to do nothing but have sex all the time,
All the time.
constantly. Stanley gets his fill on that one. Um, they have there's an episode in season 2 where they find a planet that is just doing that basically captures people and makes them do these horrible TV shows. And if you get good ratings, you go on to better shows. If you start to get low ratings, you go on to shittier shows. And then if you go to the shittiest show and you continue low ratings, then you get killed. Um, it's a funny show. It doesn't take itself seriously at any
No.
point. Um, I, I can't stand the character of 790, the robot head. He just annoys me throughout the whole thing.
Yes. I
I
think he's
hate, I hate,
supposed to.
I think he's supposed to.
Yeah.
I can't stand that character. Um, but it's really cool. It's fun to watch, and you can get it free. This is the one you can get for free. Like I said, you can get it on Amazon Prime. That's where I'm watching it. It comes through Freevee, so if you watch Freevee, you can watch it there as well.
Mhm.
And 4 seasons isn't that long to get through.
No, they didn't make
See,
that many of them.
no, seasons 1 and 2 are the better seasons of the 4. Season 3, I think, took a drop off for me. I think season 4 took a drop off even more because Prince is still evil villain in season 4 on Earth. But it's so much fun. Just give this one a watch. I think you will actually enjoy this, and you can. you can just about watch any episode and pick it up right away.
Oh
There's
yeah.
sometimes carryover from previous episodes, the overarching villain and things like that. But it's just it's so much fun to watch. I highly recommend watching Lex.
Yeah, yeah, me too. It's fun. It's
Yeah.
funny. And it's fairly decent science fiction too at the same time. It's
Yeah.
like Red Dwarf. It's funny, but it's fairly decent science fiction.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's my list for my nerdery for this week of 2 sci-fi movies and a sci-fi TV show that you need to have in your playlist.
Well, thank you, sir. And with that, we will move over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
Very nice. Today, we're going to talk about Sarajevo.
Okay.
Um, I got my information from the Holocaust Museum in Houston, the Bosnian List, a memoir of war, exile, and return, author Trevensevic Keenan, and from Wikipedia. Although many different ethnic and religious groups have resided together for 40 years under Yugoslavia's repressive communist government, this changed when the country began to collapse during the fall of communism in the early 1990s. The provinces of Slovenia and Croatia declared independence, and war quickly followed between Serbia and those breakaway republics. Ethnic tensions were brought to the forefront, and people who lived peacefully for years as neighbors turned against each other and took up arms. When Bosnia attempted to secede, Serbia, under Slobodan Milosevic leadership, invaded with the claim that it was to free fellow Serbian Orthodox Christians living in Bosnia. Starting in April of 1992, Serbia set out to ethnically cleanse Bosnian territory by systematically removing all Bosnian Muslims, known as Bosniaks. Serbia, together with its ethnic Bosnian Serbs, attacked Bosniaks with former Yugoslavian military equipment and surrounded Sarajevo, the capital city. Many Bosniaks were driven into concentration camps, um, where women and girls were systematically gang raped and other civilians were tortured, starved, and murdered. In 1993, the United States UN Security Council declared that Sarajevo, Goradzi, Srebrenica, and other Muslim enclaves were to be safe areas protected by a contingent of UN peacekeepers. But in July of 1995, Serbs committed the largest massacre in Europe since World War II. In one such area, Srebrenica, it's estimated that 23,000 women, children, and elderly people were put on buses and driven to Muslim-controlled territories, while 8,000 battle-aged men were detained and slaughtered. The so-called safe area of Srebrenica fell without a single shot fired by the UN. In 1994, NATO initiated airstrikes against Bosnian Serbs to stop the attack, and in December of 1995, U.S.-led negotiations in Dayton, Ohio, the Dayton Peace Accords, ended the conflict in Bosnia, and force was created to maintain the ceasefire. Since the end of the conflict, the International Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia, or ICTY, at The Hague has charged more than 160 persons. Convictions have included Serb, Croat, and Bosniaks. Through Serbians and Bosnian Serbs have faced the majority of charges. In 2001, former President Milosevic was captured, but he died in his cell in 2006. Radovan Karadžić, the supreme commander of the Bosnian Serb armed forces, was captured in 2008 and is being tried in The Hague on genocide charges. Radko Mladic, chief of staff of the Bosnian Serb army, was captured in May 2011 and is charged with 11 counts, including genocide and crimes against humanity. A young survivor of the Bosnian War returns to his homeland to confront the people who betrayed his family. This is from that book. At age 11, Kenan Trebanitsevic was a happy, karate-loving kid living with his family in the quiet Eastern European town of Breko. Then, in the spring of 1992, war broke out, and his friends, neighbors, and teammates all turned on him. Pero, Keenan's beloved karate coach, showed up at his door with an AK-47, screaming, "You have 1 hour to leave or be killed." Keenan's only crime was he was a Muslim. The poignant, searing memoir chronicles Keenan's miraculous escape from the brutal ethnic cleansing campaign that swept the former Yugoslavia. And after two decades in the United States, Keenan honors his father's wish to visit their homeland, making a list of what he wants to do there. Keenan decides to confront the former next door neighbor who stole from his mother, see the concentration camp where his dad and brother were imprisoned, and stand on the grave of his first betrayer to make sure he's really dead. Back in the land of his birth, Keenan finds something more powerful and shocking than revenge. He finds closure. Um, so the Bosnian War. It was an international armed conflict that took place in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is a separate country, but it has two names, Bosnia and Herzegovina, because it's a multi-ethnic state. Between 1992 and 1995, the war is commonly seen as having started on the 6th of April 1992, following a number of earlier violent incidents. The war ended on the 14th of December 1995 when the Dayton Accords were signed. The main belligerents were the forces of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Republic of Herzeg Bosnia, and the Republika Srpska. The latter two entities being proto-states led and supplied by Croatia and Serbia, respectively. So Republika Srpska was the Serbian portion of Bosnia that the Serbs were trying to get off the ground. The Republic of Herzeg Bosnia was the Croatian proto-state that they were trying to get off the ground, or the Croatians were trying to get off the ground. After a period of political and economic crises in the 1980s, constituent republics of the Socialist Federal Republics of Yugoslavia split apart, but the unresolved issue caused a series of inter-ethnic Yugoslav wars. The wars primarily affected Bosnia and Herzegovina, neighboring parts of Croatia, and some years later, Kosovo. So I should probably explain how we got there. After the Allied victory in World War II, Yugoslavia was set up as a federation of 6 republics with borders drawn along ethnic and historical lines. You had Bosnia-Herzegovina, you had Croatia, you had Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Slovenia. In addition, 2 autonomous provinces were established within Serbia, Vojvodina and Kosovo. Each of these republics had its own branch of the League of Communists of Yugoslavia party and a ruling elite, and any tensions were solved on the federal level, the Yugoslav model of state organization, as well as a middle way between planned and liberal economies, had been a relative success, and the country experienced a period of strong economic growth, the strongest in behind the Iron Curtain, as a matter of fact, and relative political stability up until the 1980s under Joseph Broz Tito. After his death in 1980, the weakening system of federal governments was left unable to cope with rising economic and political challenges. Yugoslavia was a unique state straddling both the East and the West. Moreover, its president, Joseph Broz Tito, was one of the fundamental founders of the Third World, or Group of 77, which acted as an alternative to the superpowers. More importantly, Yugoslavia acted as a buffer state between the West and the Soviet Union, and also prevented the Soviets from getting a toehold on the Mediterranean Sea. Interesting fact about Joseph Broz Tito, Stalin tried to have him killed 5 times. He wrote a letter to Stalin that said, "Look, I'm tired of doing this. If you don't quit trying to kill me, I'm going to send somebody to kill you, and I'll get it done."
Wow.
They stopped sending assassins after him. So apparently they believed him. In the 1980s, Kosovo Albanians started to demand that their autonomous province be granted the status of a full constituent republic. Starting with the 1981 protests, ethnic tensions between Albanians and Kosovo Serbs remained high over the whole decade, which resulted in the growth of Serb opposition to the high autonomy of provinces and ineffective systems of consensuses at the federal level across Yugoslavia. So basically how it broke down is because these people were all together, ostensibly, the Serbians kind of saw themselves as the big brother, as it were, and I don't want to sugarcoat this, but that's kind of how they saw themselves in the 1980s. You know, hey, yes, we all have our own voice, but we're the Serbs. Our voice is the biggest, And of course, the other constituent republics disagreed with that vehemently. In 1987, Slobodan Milosevic came to power in Serbia, and through a series of populist moves acquired de facto control over Kosovo, Vojvodina, and Montenegro, garnering a high level of support among Serbs for his centralist policies. Milosevic was met with opposition by party leaders of the Western constituent republics of Slovenia and Croatia, who also advocated greater democratization of their countries in line with the revolutions of 1989 in Eastern Europe. The League of Communists of Yugoslavia dissolved in January of 1990 along federal lines. Republican communist organizations became the separate socialist parties. During 1990, the socialists or former communists lost power to ethnic separatist parties in the first multi-party elections held across the country, except in Montenegro and Serbia. So the old communists maintained control in Montenegro and Serbia. Remember, Slobodan Milosevic was elected as the head of Serbia in 1987, when communism was still a thing. Milosevic and his allies won. The nationalist rhetoric on all sides became increasingly heated. Between June of 1991 and April of 1992, 4 constituent republics declared independence, while Montenegro and Serbia remained federated. Germany took the initiative and recognized the independence of Croatia and Slovenia, but the status of ethnic Serbs outside Serbia and Montenegro and that of ethnic Croats outside of Croatia remained unsolved. After a string of inter-ethnic incidents, the Yugoslav wars ensued, first in Croatia and then most severely in the multi-ethnic state of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The wars left economic and political damage in the region that is still felt decades later. The central government's control began to be loosened due to increasing national grievances. And the Communist parties wished to support national self-determination. Again, this was the middle way. They were not Yugoslavia was not the ironclad communist iron curtain that the rest of Eastern Europe was back in the 1980s. They chose not to participate in that. They were still socialists, but they also traded a lot with the West, which is why we got Yugo cars over here. We didn't get East German Travis, but we did get Yugos. The Yugoslav averaged in the immediate post-war 27% by the 1980s. Oh, I'm sorry. The 1974 Constitution was an attempt to short-circuit the pattern of entrenching the federal model of formalizing national rights. The loosened control basically turned Yugoslavia into a de facto confederacy, which also placed pressure on the legitimacy of the regime within the federation. But since the late 70s, a widening gap of economic resources began in developed and underdeveloped regions of Yugoslavia, severely deteriorating the federation's unity. Most developed republics, Croatia and Slovenia, rejected attempts to limit their autonomy as provided in the 1974 Constitution. Public opinion in Slovenia in 1987 saw better economic opportunities in independence from Yugoslavia than within it. There was also places that saw no economic benefit from being in Yugoslavia. For example, the autonomous province of Kosovo was poorly developed, and per capita GDP fell from 47% of the Yugoslav average to the immediate post-war period of 27% in the 1980s. That was where that came from. Right. It highlighted the vast differences in the quality of life in the different republics. Economic growth was curbed due to Western trade barriers combined with the 1973 oil crisis. Yugoslavia subsequently fell into heavy IMF debt due to a large number of International Monetary Fund loans taken out by the regime. As a condition of receiving loans, the IMF demanded the market liberalization of Yugoslavia by 1981, which they were already doing. Yugoslavia had incurred $19.9 billion in foreign debt. Another concern was the level of unemployment at 1 million by 1980. This problem was compounded by the general unproductiveness of the South, which not only added to Yugoslavia's economic woes, but also irritated Slovenes and Croatians further. On May 4th, 1980, Joseph Broz Tito died, or his death was announced through state broadcast across Yugoslavia. His death removed what many international political observers saw as Yugoslavia's main unifying force, and subsequent ethnic tensions started to grow in Yugoslavia. The crisis that emerged in Yugoslavia was connected with the weakening of the communist states in Eastern Europe toward the end of the Cold War, leading to the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. In Yugoslavia, the National Communist Party's official called the League of Communists of Yugoslavia has lost its ideological base. In 1986, the Serbian Academy of Sciences and Arts contributed significantly to the rise of nationalist sentiment as it drafted the controversial Sanu Memorandum protesting against the weakening of the Serbian central government. The problem with the Serbian social autonomous province of Kosovo between ethnic Serbs and Albanians grew exponentially. This, coupled with economic problems in Kosovo and Serbia as a whole, led to even greater Serbian resentment of the 1974 constitution. Kosovo Albanians started to demand that Kosovo be granted the status of constituent republics beginning in the early 1980s, particularly with the 81 protests, which we mentioned before. This eventually led to the repression of the Albanian majority in Kosovo. Meanwhile, the more prosperous republics of SR Slovenia and SR Croatia wanted to move towards decentralization and democracy. So Slovenia and Croatia were the first two to join the EU. They're in the EU now. Most of the rest of them aren't even in yet. But again, the thing about Tito, Tito's mother was a Serbian. His father was, I think, Croatian, and he grew up in Bosnia. So the reason he was able to be such an all things to everyone there was because he lived across that ethnic divide that was there in Yugoslavia. So he was the prime symbol of that. And when he died in 1980, and he was a very old gentleman too. I mean, he was not a young man in the Second World War when he was running the partisans. He was probably in his 30s at that point. So by 1980, he was not a spring chicken. He did lead a nice full life. But yeah, when he died, things started to fall apart in Yugoslavia pretty quickly. And they were having difficulty repaying the debts in the 1980s. Their debt load, initially estimated as sum equal to $6 billion US, turned out to be the equivalent of $21 billion US.
Wow.
Which was a lot of money for a little bit of Yugoslavia. In 1984, the Reagan administration issued a classified document, National Security Decision Directive 133, expressing concern that Yugoslavia's debt load might cause the country to align with the Soviet bloc. The 1980s were a time of economic austerity, and International Monetary Fund imposed stringent conditions on Yugoslavia, which caused much resentment toward the communist elites who had so mismanaged the economy. It was at this point that they started selling the Yugos internationally, which actually helped them. But at the same time, the Agri-Comeric enterprise, which is the big agricultural state agency that basically bought all your crops and sold them to the stores and whatnot, of Bosnia, turned out to be the center of a vast nexus of corruption running all across Yugoslavia. So Agri-Comeric had issued promissory notes the equivalent of almost $1 billion US without collateral, forcing the state to assume responsibility for the debts when Agri-Comeric finally collapsed. And of course, in 1987, Serbian official Slobodan Milosevic was sent to bring calm to the ethnically driven protests by Serbs against the Albanian administration of SAP Kosovo. Milosevic had been, up to that point, a hardline communist who had decried all forms of nationalism as treachery, such as condemning the Sanu Memorandum as nothing else but the darkest of nationalism. However, Kosovo's autonomy had always been an unpopular policy in Serbia, and he took advantage of the situation and made a departure from traditional communist neutrality on the issue of Kosovo. Milosevic assured Serbs that their mistreatment by ethnic Albanians would be stopped. He then began a campaign against the ruling communist elite of SR Serbia, demanding reductions in the autonomy of Kosovo and Vojvodina. These actions made him popular amongst Serbs and aided his rise in power in Serbia. Milosevic and his allies took on an aggressive nationalist agenda of reviving SR Serbia within Yugoslavia, promising reforms and protection of all Serbs. Which was, interesting and fine for the Serbs. However, the Croatians had a problem with that, as they were the next largest majority in Yugoslavia. In January of 1990, the extraordinary 14th Congress of the League of Communists of Yugoslavia was convened. The combined Yugoslav ruling party, the League of Communists of Yugoslavia, was in crisis. Most of the Congress was spent with the Serbian and Slovene delegations arguing over the future of the League of Communists and Yugoslavia. SR Croatia prevented Serb protesters from reaching Slovenia. The Serbian delegation, led by Milosevic, insisted on a policy of one person, one vote in the party membership, which would empower the largest party ethnic group, the Serbs. In turn, the Croats and Slovenes sought to reform Yugoslavia by delegating even more power to the 6 republics, but were voted down continuously in every motion and attempted to force the party to adopt the new voting system. As a result, the Croatian delegation, led by Chairman Ivica Rakan, and Slovene delegations left the Congress on the 23rd of January of 1990, effectively dissolving the All-Yugoslav Party. Along with external pressure, this caused the adoption of multi-party systems in all the republics. The following republics organized multi-party elections in 1990, and the former communists mostly failed to win re-elections, again, except for Serbia and Montenegro. While most of the elected governments took on nationalist platforms promising to protect their separate national interests in multi-party parliamentary elections, nationalists defeated rebranded former communist parties in Slovenia in April of 1990, in Croatia on April and May of 1990, in Macedonia in November and December of 1990, and Bosnia and Herzegovina on the 18th and 25th of November in 1990. In multi-party parliamentary elections, rebranded former communist parties were victorious in Montenegro and Serbia, as I said before. In Croatia, the National Croatian Democratic Union was elected to power, led by controversial nationalist Franjo Tudjman, under the promise of protecting Croatia from Milosevic. Publicly advocating Croatian sovereignty, Croatian Serbs were wary of Tudjman's nationalist government. In 1990, Serb nationalists in the southern Croatian town of Knin organized a formed and separatist entity known as the SAO Krajina, which demanded to remain in the union with the rest of the Serb populations in Croatia if Croatia decided to secede. The government of Serbia endorsed the rebellion of the Croatian Serbs, claiming that for the Serbs, rule under Tudjman government would be equivalent to World War II era fascist independent state of Croatia, which committed genocide against the Serbs. Which is true. They did. Milosevic used this to rally Serbs against the Croatian government, and Serbian newspapers joined in the warmongering. Serbia had by now printed $1.8 billion worth of new money without any backing of the Yugoslav National Bank. And in the 1990 Slovenian independence referendum held on the 23rd of December 1990, a vast majority of residents voted for independence. 88.5%, with about 95% participation. So it was overwhelming that the Slovenes wanted to become an independent nation. And they did. In January of 1991, Yugoslav Counterintelligence Services, KOS, displayed a video of secret meetings, the Spiegel tapes, where they purported to have happened sometime in 1990 between the Croatian defense minister, Martin Spiegel, and 2 other men. Spiegel announced during the meeting that Croatia was at war with the Yugoslav People's Army, and wanted to indict Spiegel for treason and illegal imports of arms, mainly from Hungary. This turned out to be a lie. It was a fake. On the 1st of March 1991, the Pakrac clash ensued, and the JNA was deployed to the scene. On the 9th of March 1991, protests in Belgrade were suppressed by the help of the army. On 12th of March 1991, the leadership of Army met with the presidency in an attempt to convince them to declare a state of emergency, which would allow for the pan-Yugoslav army to take control of the country. Yugoslav Army Chief Vlečko Kajic declared that there was a conspiracy to destroy the country, saying, "An insidious plan has been drawn up to destroy Yugoslavia. Stage 1 is civil war. Stage 2 is foreign intervention. Then puppet regimes will be set up throughout Yugoslavia." This statement effectively implied that the new independent advocating governments of the republics were seen by Serbs as a tool of the West. Croatian delegate Setban Masic responded angrily to the proposal, accusing Jovic and Kajic of attempting to use the army to create a greater Serbia, and declared this means the war. Jovic and Kajic then called upon the delegates of each republic to vote on whether to allow martial law, and warned them that Yugoslavia would likely fall apart if martial law was not introduced. In the meeting, a vote was taken on a proposal to enact martial law to allow for military actions to end the crisis. In Croatia, by providing protection for the Serbs, the proposal was rejected by the Bosnian delegation, believing that there was still the possibility of diplomacy being able to solve the crisis. The Yugoslav presidential crisis reached an impasse when Kosovo's Riza Spancu, it's spelled Sapunxiu. I'm going to say Spancu. He defected his faction to the second vote of martial law on 1991. Jovic briefly resigned from the presidency in protest, but soon returned. And on the 16th of May, 1991, the Serbian parliament replaced Spancu with Sejo Bramovic and Vojvodina's Nenad Busin with Jugoslav Kostic. So, I know that is a lot of information, but I had to give that information first before I actually talk about what happened. So, the siege of Sarajevo was a prolonged blockade of Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, during the Bosnian War. Bosnian Serbs, whose strategic goal was to create a new Bosnian Serb state of the Republic of Srpska that would include Bosniak majority areas, encircled Sarajevo with a sieging force of 13,000 soldiers, as well as tanks from the army. They stationed up on the surrounding hills. From there, they assaulted the city with artillery, tanks, and small arms. From the 2nd of May, 1992, the Serbs blockaded the city. The Bosnian government forces inside the besieged city, approximately with 34,931 troops on average, without heavy weapons or armor, defending much of the urban areas of the city throughout the war, but weren't able to break the siege. The siege was lifted following the signing of the Dayton Agreement on December 14th, 1995. A total of 13,952 people were killed during the siege, including 5,434 civilians.
Wow.
Yeah. The Bosnian Defense Force, which again did not have large arms, they were going up against tanks, APCs, artillery, and they had basically AK-47s. And in some cases, because they still made them in Yugoslavia, they had Mausers.
Wow.
Single action Mausers up against tanks. Soviet tanks, like T-60s. They only sustained 3,500 casualties. That in itself is a miracle. While the Bosnian Serb military casualties numbered 2,200, the 1991 census indicated that before the siege, the city and its surrounding areas had a total population of about 500,000 people. According to some estimates, the total population of the city proper prior to the siege was 435,000. Estimations of the population of Sarajevo after the siege ranged from 300 to 380,000. So at the smallest amount, killed, missing, forced to flee their homes, you're talking 130,000 people. And they couldn't get out because the way was blocked.
Right.
So basically 130,000 people, more than likely than not, and we probably will never know, were murdered in Sarajevo. Violence broke out in many places during and after the referendum. On the 1st of March, a gunman opened fire at a Bosnian Serb wedding procession, Sarajevo's historical center, in the Bosniak section of the city. The guests were carrying and waving Serbian flags, an act which the Bosniaks who mostly supported independence, interpreted it as a deliberate provocation. The group's father was killed and an Orthodox priest was wounded. Some of the witnesses identified the shooter as Ramij Delizlek, a Bosniak gangster who had become increasingly brazen since the collapse of communists. Arrest warrants were issued for him and another assailant, but little effort was made by the Sarajevo police to apprehend them. And this is basically what kind of cracked it off. On the 2nd of March, Serb paramilitary set up barricades and positioned snipers near Sarajevo's parliament building, but their coup d'etat was thwarted by thousands of Sarajevo citizens who took to the streets and placed themselves in front of the snipers. Armed Bosniaks known as Green Berets also erected barricades in and around Sarajevo. More barricades appeared near Banja Luka, and a motorist was killed by armed Serbs in Dobaj. But by the end of the day, 12 people had been killed in the fighting. Following Bosnia and Herzegovina's official declaration of independence from Yugoslavia, sporadic fighting broke out between the Serbs and government forces. Here's the thing about all this. These people were all neighbors and friends. In some cases they were married. Like Tito. Tito was multi-ethnic. A lot of these people were. But when this cracked off, and you remember all the stuff was going on in 1989 up through about 1993 in the former Eastern Bloc. When this cracked off, everybody took up arms. And the officials who were supposed to be protecting them, in most cases, were part of the problem. Except for, and this is in the research of this, the only people I can see as not being part of the problem were the defense forces, of Sarajevo itself. Basically the Sarajevo Police Department, because essentially what they only had rifles. I don't know how much trouble they could do, but I mean, they were even shooting their fellow Bosniaks who were getting nuts trying to kill. The Serbians, killed our guy. Let's go kill them. Going on all over the city, and it was under siege for a year and a half. Nuts, just nuts. And everybody started these little small paramilitary groups. There were snipers set up, just killing people at random. And the siege wasn't technical. And I quit fighting in late 1994, but officially the siege did not end until the Dayton Accords were signed in 1995. On April 6th of 1992, they started shelling the city, the Serb forces. And then the Serbs got in a fight with the Croatian forces. So they started beating up on each other as opposed to beating up on Sarajevo. And then when they got done with that, they both started shelling Sarajevo again. It's nuts. JNA troops from downtown Sarajevo flew into the Sarajevo airport, and they never even made it out. They got on a bus, and the bus got blown up. Yeah. Prison camps. There were concentration camps. 8,000 men from one town, Srebrenica. 8,000 men were taken into this concentration camp, put in basically a cattle barn, and they took them out like a dozen at a time, shot them and threw them in a hole. 8,000 of them, all of them gone, and then gang raped their wives and daughters, sisters, moms, grandmas. Quite a few of those women died as well. Just trying to breed out the Muslims, I think, is it's not a direct translation. Again, I don't speak Serbian. But that's basically what they were trying to do. And it popped off so bad. Several things are described as massacres, which is why, the Hague is still prosecuting dudes from this. And this was 30 years or 25 years ago now.
Right.
Like, yeah. Oh, in some cases, almost 30 because it's 2024. Yeah, they're still prosecuting guys because they have to find them, get them out. Slobodan Milosevic was not taken to task for like a decade after he did what he did, and that dude basically lit the fire on it. He lit the fuse on this, which is weird because he started out as a hardliner communist, you know, a Tito guy. But yeah, the ICTY trial chamber, the trial against Stanislav Galik, um, served general of the siege of Sarajevo, for which he was sentenced to life imprisonment for crimes against humanity, concluded that the massacre was committed by Serb forces in and around Sarajevo. The second massacre occurred about 18 months later at around 11 a.m. August 28th, 1995, just several hours before the attack. Bosnian Serb authorities tentatively expressed their will to accept Richard Holbrooke's peace plan. In the attack, 5 shells were fired, but casualties were fewer, 43 dead and 75 wounded. And then, of course, right after that, the Dayton Peace Accords happened. So the last people killed in the surge of Sarajevo, there were 43. And that was August 28th, 1995. The Dayton Accords were signed in September, I believe. So there you go. So yeah, this is the Srebrenica genocide. It was 8,000 Bosniak Muslims were killed. Just awful,
Mm-hmm.
awful. Terrible period in our history for people who were, perfectly happy neighbors like less than a decade before.
Right.
It's weird, but it was a weird domino effect. As soon as Tito died, and they ran into some financial issues, it tore that country up. And luckily some of them have recovered. Um, but yeah, that's about it for Sarajevo. I'm sorry that it was so front loaded with a lot of history, but you kind of got to understand that there really weren't any good guys in this.
Right.
Everybody was out for blood. Um, for as far as I could tell, no reason. No reason. Oh, hey, we're not doing too well financially. Oh, it's their fault. Well, no,
Well,
they're not doing too well financially either.
yeah, I mean that's the thing. You say for no reason. It was intolerance,
Yeah,
intolerance of others, and that sparked off a lot of conflicts and
yeah.
a lot of wars in our history. So yeah, I mean it's good to know this stuff. It's said so many times. I echo it, and I'm not the first one to say it by any means. But history is doomed to repeat itself,
Yes, it
and
is.
if we don't know our own history, um, the same bad things can happen over and over again. Knowing your history and how to prevent things like that from happening, I think are very key. So awesome. I appreciate that. Thanks for taking over on the murdery side of the house.
Thank you for taking over on the nerdery side.
That takes us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more information about us on nerderymurdery.com. That's our hub, our website, where you can find more about us. You can find links to this episode as well as pictures to what we're talking about. Plus, there's a link to our YouTube page on the front page of our website where Zig so often updates our YouTube page.
Yes, and you can go out and catch several episodes of Lex as well as the full movie of Krull
Awesome.
and scenes from Looker.
Awesome. You can also find the link to our merchandise page, or if you wish to show off your Nerdery Murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing something from our store. That, along with our Patreon, our patrons do help with the costs that are associated with this store as well as our merchandise. There are costs that are associated with keeping this show on the air. So please do consider purchasing something from the store or becoming a patron to help support your favorite show.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for the topics we discuss. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
nope.
Oh, I have been Zig with your murdery.
And I've been Geoffrey with your nerdery.
Cue the music.